Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Hello, you made it to Eugene Cannabis TV once again, and I got my friend Reverend Will, co-host at the Eugene Cannabis TV show. Been doing this since 2004, and we just keep moving forward. We're talking about freedom and the ability to use a plant.
Yeah.
As our friend Bobby Sixtro says, if we're going to make a plant illegal, let's make something illegal that's nasty. We all get behind, like poison oak.
Poison
oak, eradicate it. Yeah.
Something like that.
So we just came back from the conference here happened in Eugene, the statewide conference. We called this one the Marijuana Super Pac, and I talked to a lot of people there, about 50 people. And who were handing out these buttons? Do you remember who that was?
Peter from Southern
Oh,
Oregon.
Peter. Okay. Yeah. Well, go ahead and read that. Well, this is the button they were handing out.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much says it all. Prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason in that it attempts to control a man's appetite by legislation and makes crimes of things that are not crimes. Abraham Lincoln. So understand, folks, what we go through isn't something new. It's just the government doing what it wants to, whether we want them to or not. And that's always been my biggest complaint about things, is the fact that we can't get them to be accountable. I mean, we don't have the men with the guns who are working for us to go to them and say, excuse me, when you're saying that marijuana is bad for people, show me somebody who's died from it. Okay, give me some. I mean, you've actually tried to force people to do their research in a way that's dovetailed so that it comes out with a bad picture going back to people, and that's not what's happening. I mean, there was just a report on breast cancer that I don't have with me right now, but I will bring it next week when we come in, and it's talking about how they're not, this professor who's been studying this forever is going, I can't find anything that's really wrong with this, so they don't want his research published. You know, the meeting itself I thought was great. We had people from different groups and organizations that showed up. Everybody talked about the subject. Nobody was concerned with what others had done in the past, which is what we have to do if we're really going to move forward in a positive way. Just what we talked about last week, individuals accepting accountability for themselves and going, whatever happened between you and me in the past is between you and me. Let's make a difference and get on the same page.
Definitely, yes. United we stand, divided we fall. So you've got to get together, strength in numbers and all that. Definitely.
The things that were being said that were brought up were great, and I'm looking forward to seeing these implemented and us having more meetings and bringing together even more people. What would have been great would have been to have had the 40 to 50 people that showed up for that meeting to have been at the Federal Building the day before. Interesting thing about them showing up at the Federal Building the day before would have been whether or not they were told by the agents that are at the door whether or not Danbo's court case was really happening, because when we pulled up, they said, who? No, there's no court case like that. Not here, not today.
And nobody by that name.
And it was the only court case that was going on. So.
Yeah, and not only that, it not only happened to Reverend Will, but it also happened to another friend at a separate time. So it happened at least twice that we know of.
And possibly a third time, because Jeff was saying that when he showed up as well.
That's what I'm talking about, Jeff.
Oh,
yeah.
Jeff. Well, also Gordon, when he showed up.
Oh, three of them. Okay. Well.
Yeah, he called me because he couldn't find it. And I was saying, it's there, just keep looking.
Yeah.
But when you got to walk into a building and walk sideways to go forward, it kind of shows you the kind of convoluted thinking that these people had. Like you said, being somebody who studied architecture and stuff before, you look at this building and you're going, it's all about control.
Yep,
it's all about intimidation.
Yep, the whole building. And by the way, I think just very recently I saw, I know what it was. It was 60 Minutes on Sunday night. They did a segment, and they're saying that the federal government is building federal courthouses all over the country, and they're not needed. They have cases where there's federal courthouses, new ones, sitting across the street from the old one that's now vacant.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, Eugene's a good example. What is it? You know, a couple hundred feet from one to the other, and yeah, you know, the whole thing is they don't mind wasting their money so they can say they can't use it to help people. And that's one of the strangest things in the world, because these people are supposed to be responsive to us. The whole thing is, if there is no us, if they only see, like myself, showing up at the city council meeting to bring up this, if you are a discrimination-free zone, and someone brings to your attention that they're being discriminated against, it seems like the very least that you could do was to create a committee or one of those other things that they do to investigate whether or not we're really discriminated against. Now, I know I've tried to talk to DanK about this before, but to me, when you're not supposed to work and you're not supposed to drive and you can't do your medicine except at home, and those are the three big basic ones, that's straight up discrimination, because nobody else in this country has to go home to do their medication. And as far as driving on your medication, if this stays in your system, if you do it on January 1st, January 30th, it can still be in your system, whether you didn't do it any other time that month. So you get pulled over on the 30th, and they say that you're still stoned from the 1st. Is that what they're saying? Because it's not true. But it's just another one of those little catch-22s that they like to put out. And then us being not in a public place. So you're basically saying you're ashamed of us, okay, not even knowing who we are. And that's another thing that just drives me up a wall. As a veteran, the PTSD, not having PTSD as one of the conditions for marijuana is a crime. It's a straight-up crime. Those vets coming back here, if they can utilize this, and they could if it were legal and part of our process, to help them to be able to sleep alone, if nothing else. If you don't understand PTSD, you rage and you're intimidated by most everything, and that in that process you need help. In order to get that, you have to be rested. You're not going to rest if you're having nightmares. And one of the things that they've said about pot forever is the fact that it takes away your dreams. Okay, well, if you're not dreaming about the things that happened over there, then you get a chance to rest. That's huge. That alone should have PTSD as one of the things. And it's not just the people who are coming back from overseas. We're talking about the families where somebody's been raped. Or like this one youth here where the young man was just shot and killed. We're going to talk about it later. But I mean, in his own home, flushing a little bit of pot out of fear, he gets shot because he's wrestling with a cop. Now, the man's dead over pot. Now, we don't know if he was using it medically, and we don't even have a right to use it recreationally, which we should have, because other people have their tools that they use to relax. And we're not allowed that.
PTSD, if I remember correctly, Nevada or New Mexico is the only state that has them that's covered under medical marijuana. And Oregon has tried, we've tried at least twice, and I know for a fact, and maybe more than that, but I know for a fact we've tried twice to get PTSD added to the Oregon medical marijuana. They all kinds of testimony and evidence and the whole bit, but they got their blinders on, they can't they wouldn't do it. And then they turn around, and then the legislature, every time they get in session, they're trying to at least weaken the medical marijuana program. And so we fought that off, and now they raised the fees, in some cases doubled the fees. So the state's already making money on the medical marijuana program. Then they double the fees to make more money, but they can't help the people on it by giving them conditions that they need to qualify, like PTSD.
Like PTSD, right?
And
they
say
they don't want any of those mental issues being brought in as ways of getting marijuana, because they're so afraid of what happens to you when you smoke. I'm sorry, folks, but for all of you out there, if you've never seen anybody that you knew was smoking pot, you wouldn't know that they're smoking pot. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's not like we grow horns or that all of a sudden our whole body turns red like the devil. You know,
Your tongue will turn green, though, right? You remember? You heard that?
No.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've heard a couple of cases of it. And there's one here in town. A cop pulled him over and said that he was under the influence and did a sobriety test, and he passed. But he said that no, he was under influence of marijuana, and he could tell because his tongue was green. So he made him submit to a drug test, and he ended up being convicted. Yeah, green tongue. So there's another one, and you know, yeah, green tongue. So that's where the law enforcement is flat lying and telling people BS, you know. And what you want to mention, Obama? Yeah, you said something about
Well, what I wanted to mention was, you know, the budget process. You know, they talk about how many billions of dollars are owed, and then we were just at the federal building the other day, and we listened to the judge who was whining and the district attorney who was whining about not having enough time in the day nor enough money to pay the people who needed to be there to do the process, so that they weren't all cramped and crammed about how many court cases they had. And I was standing there and I just said, you know, there's a simple solution to this. You legalize it, you tell the truth that no one's dying from smoking pot. You actually tell the truth about that, and then you free up all these court cases that are there. And you want to free up the jail space, and you go back through your cases and you find the people who are there on these victimless crimes. We're not talking about somebody who has submachine guns out in the woods trying to protect a 200-acre plot of land. No, that's the Mexican cartel. If you can't figure out the difference, then we can help you in that process. We can educate you. Okay, but understand, coming to a door where a private citizen has weapons in his home to protect his home and also has marijuana in the home, that should not be a violation one way or the other, because we have a right to have our arms. And of course, unless you're a felon. Now, if you're a felon for pot, and you throw these things out and you make it legal, then I could be a normal citizen again and I could have weapons in my home. You know, folks, the solutions are all easy. They're very simple and they're right in front of our faces. The thing is that if you don't care and you don't want to know, well, understand this. I've been fighting this battle for 30 years. I've lost 2 families over it. And right now, my sister has called me to let me know that she has a mass and has to go back in to be checked for her breast cancer. One of our biggest problems was the fact that she smoked cigarettes, and I told her I wouldn't be there if she got cancer because I was telling her that she should not be smoking cigarettes. Well, she might have cancer, and if she does, and understand she can't get the help that I feel she needs because the people who are trying to cure cancer are looking in the wrong places. We have cures within the cannabis field that can help people with cancer, help people with epilepsy, help people who are on dialysis. I mean, why is it that we don't care enough about these people to mandate that the federal government either leave us alone or change the law so that we can have the medicine that we can use to save ourselves? That's really ridiculous. It's actually so sad, it's unreal, because it's the people that we have trust in.
Yeah, do a search on the internet, Rick Simpson. Rick Simpson, Run from the Cure. I'll tell you all about the high dosage tinctures that he's developed, and it's actually helping people. And there's been studies that have proven that cannabis will reduce cancerous
cancerous cells that are in your body.
Yeah, so it's incredible. But again, they're running from the cure, so they got their heads buried in the sand, so to speak.
This is where we need your support,
That's
people.
right.
This is where we need you coming out. This is where we need you coming to us and letting us know what's going on with you. You know, we need more people on here letting people know exactly what's going on so that they can understand.
So support Eugene Cannabis TV and come on down. We need to wrap this up. We appreciate Ron Will coming in and helping us again. And proud to say, co-host. Two old farts you're talking about.
There it is. And we're not going to stop.
That's right. Oh, thanks a lot. Well, here again with M Research, Troy with M Research, and talking about different aspects of the whole M Research deal. And patient sciences is what we want to talk about in this segment.
Okay, so when we first put this together, the M-Scale project itself, the language, that infrastructure was what we first rolled out. It became very clear by the successful application of it that we would only make things better if I had a group of people yelling at me, right? Because the patients did an awesome job of helping us steer down a better path than we could come up with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is, because we were working with patients and doctors, and because patients and doctors speak a bit of a different language, right? Because they're talking more health and we versus agronomics or agriculture, it became very clear that it would be really important to have a champion for patients and doctors and physicians, healthcare professionals. That became patient sciences, where we had people who had backgrounds in healthcare and working with doctors and nurses and things like that, working with other healthcare professionals. And so patient sciences was kind of born as a move to try to enhance the program. So we had people talking to each other in ways that they understood, because healthcare definitely has a lot of jargon. It also is where we house a lot of sensitive information about patients. And so it was important that we have the same programs that protect the doctor's office in place with the same information that patients were providing us, because we were looking at their medical records. And so we needed HIPAA compliance, and we needed to understand that. And instead of basically trying to protect a grower with HIPAA laws, right, because that overhead is not necessary for them, it made sense to package it. And it also then allowed us to start really focusing on patients and the outcome that they had. So it allowed us to be able to engage doctors, and using this patient outcome analysis tool, which is basically a physician assessment that we developed for mental health professionals evaluating the effects of pharmaceuticals. We then took that and we changed some aspects about it so we could include the medicine marijuana. Okay, and so from there we were able to look at that before and after, with the 0 day being their entry into their medical program. So when they entered their state medical program, that was day 0. They had time beforehand and they had time after. And we looked at their medical records before and after entering this program. And what we found is that there was a difference in their life, and their life was documented differently by their doctors. So what patient sciences does is it categorizes and does the evaluation per the information from doctors about the impact of the medicine on their patients. And so patient sciences is a champion for patients. Patient sciences folks who have got the little medical chemistry badge that is the patient sciences logo are often yelling at me instead of talking to me, because they want what's best for patients, and we need to make sure that our project stays and serves them. And that's exactly what we wanted it to have happen. Is I wanted a group of people that knew what was going on to make sure our project stayed on track, because we're solving patients' issues. And whether that's having difficulty sleep, or cancer, or fibromyalgia, or MS, or cystic fibrosis, or whatever, it's all important. Right? De-stressing is just as important. We always joke that if Viagra is a pharmaceutical, marijuana is medicine. So a little levity. We don't necessarily have to solve the world's problems, because it provides a lot of very beneficial things without being toxic. At the same time, it also does things as most important as neuroprotection and apoptosis in cancer cells. And so we also need to understand that it is a tool nonetheless.
By the way, I heard recently Viagra and X-Lax together, that'll get you coming and going. Well, that's, yeah, and then that also kind of erases the anecdotal thing about, well, no, it's not anecdotal, we have records and we can show it.
As soon as the doctor signs your notes or concludes your notes, that now becomes a professional opinion, right? And that's a documentation, even less an opinion and more of a statement of fact that would technically be admissible, and not technically, it is admissible in court. And so the information that we're using is the opposite of anecdotal. Anecdotal is great, right? Because it's easy to explain anecdotal. But when we're sitting in front of a legislative group who wants to understand and wants credibility, we don't have time for anecdote. We leave all the anecdotes on their table, right? They can tell us a bunch of BS and of things that they think about and that they've heard, and we can show them patient number 11632, patient 113635, or our dream is to have a big pile of these popes and be able to go through and then say, Governor, please stop us. He's a medical doctor right now, and pull out the Pope and show him a tool that he recognizes as a medical doctor and would assess to be a very comprehensive evaluation.
That's great. All right, we appreciate it so much. Some more explanation of FM research, and that's our friend Troy. So stay tuned for another segment a little further down the road. So I appreciate it, Sherry. Thank you. Yeah, we've got a special report here that we wanted to talk about the local shooting here in Eugene. It's a killing, a burglary, home invasion they call it, I guess, and the homeowner shot one of the burglars. So, you know, at the first outset, we're thinking, oh, great, somebody protected the property, you know, gun rights, you know, but then it turns out that it was a medical marijuana grow, and that may have something to do with marijuana. So this makes it kind of interesting. So.
Well, it is interesting how it shifts. You know, when they're talking about the story, first it's the burglary and stuff, and I mean, here, they got the guy being arraigned on charges of second-degree robbery and first-degree burglary. Guess there wasn't any assault in there or anything, because otherwise that would have been in there too. So, I mean, but once it becomes marijuana-oriented, all of a sudden it's something that's like almost tolerable as far as, oh, well, we should have expected this because it's a medical marijuana grow. And that's what happens around medical marijuana grows. You have people who are violent and who come in and try and steal things. Understand, if these guys would have known that you had a safe in your house, whether they knew that you had $1,001,001 in there or nothing in there, your safe was just as much at risk as this pot grow. So when you think of that there's a difference somehow, that's the kind of discriminatory thinking that we bring up on this show so that people will pay attention to the fact that we're not different than anybody else. Just because marijuana is in our lives does not make us lepers. It does not make us inept. It does not make us somebody who's the dregs of the earth. I mean, understand, some of our athletes who get paid millions of dollars, who have done some of the most outrageous and wonderful things in order to make us stand up for our country and be patriotic and other things, have smoked pot. They've smoked it to relax. They've smoked it to use as a medicine. They've used it spiritually. Now, why is it that because the government says there's something wrong with it, that you can look at something like this, and because it's medical, you can say you expect it? You take and you put us in the parts of the town where nobody else wants to be, and yet we still are able to make it happen. If we try to go into a really nice neighborhood and stuff, you're afraid of us. Well, if you got to know us, you would have no reason to be afraid of us. But when you judge us before you know us, it's awful hard to get to know us, because you already have these incredibly preconceived notions given to you by a government that's lied about its wars, that has lobbyists who come in and pander and treat and bribe congressmen. Oh, it's a fine line as to whether or not it's a bribe or not. It's a fine line as to whether or not there's conflict of interest. Give me a break. We need help, and we need you to understand they don't investigate traffic accidents anymore unless there's injuries. They don't come to homes for invasions and stuff unless there is something like this. Excuse me, what's the police department so busy doing? That's my question about this whole thing, is that you didn't do anything to stop this from happening, but afterwards you're going to sit there and judge people, and you're going to have people who are paid to judge people decide what was really going on in this home. And basically all you're doing is guessing.
Yeah, here it says, a neighbor who spoke with the registered order condition of anonymity said the home where the shooting occurred was the site of a medical marijuana grow. The home, the home's owner declined to comment when asked about that on Friday. When asked during a news conference if medical marijuana is to be grown at the house, Detective Matt Herbert said, paused before saying, I don't know yet. He said that the shooter told police that he grabbed a handgun after two men forced their way into his home while he was alone there. They say the shooter is cooperating with police. But it also goes on to say that the shooter's mother identified the shooter during an interview, which that's interesting. So they may have known each other.
Right.
That adds something to the case. But it is registered guard's policy not to name crime victims in most cases. The detective said investigators certainly view the shooter as a crime victim. He added that it will be up to the Lane County prosecutors to decide if the shooting was legal. State law allows a person to protect himself by shooting at someone who is committing or attempting to commit a residential burglary. Another thing that was interesting, that his wife said following the shooting that she and her husband do not own guns. She did not know who owns the gun that was used in the incident. That's kind of interesting. I'm anxious to hear more about this. Of course, some of these things, you may never well hear the details. Some of these cases you hear are real damning sometimes towards medical patients. And then, truth be known, there were never any charges filed and it all went away. But you don't hear that. You just hear about how bad it sounds, and then they leave it hanging, so everybody's thinking, well, yeah, okay. And essentially, I mean, in reality, it's nothing.
Well, Dan, it's just like when we talk about Alvey and Irv, Rosenfeld, and these other people who have federal medical cards. Okay, so many people think that either that didn't happen, or that, oh, well, they're just some rummies that, are potheads and just need to smoke pot. Alvey's been battling glaucoma, as far as I know, all of her life. And that in this process, the better the quality of the herb, the better the reception was for her to be healed. And Irv Rosenfeld, as far as I know, is this multi-million-dollar investor who, smokes herb blatantly wherever he goes, on the Capitol steps or anywhere, because he has this federal medical card. But for myself, I always think back to the people in Africa and other places where they had to have a card to move around the country. They had to show this in order to move from one place to another. And here right now, when we have to have our card in order to get the herb, the card is doing absolutely nothing to get us our herb. All it's doing is helping them to be able to track it, right?
Yeah, track people. Yeah.
Thanks again, buddy, for being here.
You bet. Okay, well, let's see how this turns out. We'll let you know more information. So remember, we have the...
Stay in touch.
Yes, we have, I forgot to talk about it, February 11th, the Marijuana Super Pac meeting, February 11th at high noon.
Voter Power.
Voter Power, 687 River Avenue. Thanks for being here, Reverend Will. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.